Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Plaid Stallion's Toy Ventures. This week, with May the 4th upon us, I thought it'd be fun to talk about my Kenner Star Wars collection. A lot of people who know me are actually surprised I even have a Kenner Star Wars collection. I'm much more focused on Mego and things that predate Star Wars than I am of that era, but I was 6 years old when the first movie came out, and I got washed in that tidal wave just like the rest of us. And I definitely have some very special memories and fond attachment to Kenner Star Wars stuff. I just have a few principles attached to collecting Star Wars. I have a collector monster inside of me, and I can go overboard. And Star Wars is a giant pool to swim in, and it can be addictive. So I've kept it to a very few things. My rules are only from Star Wars, the first movie. That's my favorite. I have nothing against the other two, but there's a special connection to that first, summer of 77, 78 for me. And I really try to keep that pure. Two, only what I can display. I have no storage unit somewhere or tubs in my garage full of vintage toys. If I can't put it on the wall, I get rid of it. Three, I confine myself to vintage only. There's a lot of nice stuff out there, and it never stops coming, but I have to keep it in check, so I do not buy new Star Wars toys of any kind. I did for my kids, but even that's past. And four, if I do find something in the package, I really prefer it to be in the Canadian pack. That's just a special connection to childhood there. The bilingual packaging is kind of like a piece of home. And my final rule is I never try to buy this stuff online. I try to buy it live, either at a toy show, flea market, antique mall, or at a vintage toy brick and mortar store. I like that kind of transaction more than mailing away for a Star Wars piece. I don't know. It's something about the hunt. So let's begin, and I'll show you my favorite pieces of all time. These 12 are my original 12 Star Wars figures. When I was in high school, my parents moved, and it got a little sloppy, I guess, and some stuff just kind of got hidden. So that was around 1989, and I'd say probably around 1997, when I was living on my own, I stopped by my parents' house and I started looking through some photo frames. And at the bottom of the photo frames was my original Darth Vader collector case with my Mego Pocket superheroes and the mass majority of my Star Wars figures. Most of them were actually in really good shape. I was a pretty decent kid about it. The only one that's really heavily damaged is my Han Solo, but I remember buying him at a variety store when I was 7 years old, and it's just such a strong memory. I'd rather have that on display than a beautiful mint one. So having these kind of held my Star Wars, itch for a long time. I mean, when you have your original childhood figures and they're in nice shape and on display, you're really not like searching or going through bins or anything like that. You're pretty happy. What happened next, though, about 10 years later, I was in Tampa, Florida with my family on vacation, and of course I went to a comic book store. Duh. And I found a resealed carded Han Solo for $75. Now, I have no problem with reseals. It's not really something that bothers me all that much. I'm not an AFA graded guy. I just want to, see something that reminds me of childhood. And the original 12 Star Wars figures are just nostalgia buttons for me. And lucky for me, most Star Wars collectors really devalue resealed figures, much more than anyone else I know. So I was able to get the original 12 all for under $100. It took me about 6 or 7 years to do it, but I was pretty pleased with that. I love just picking away at a collection and finding stuff, and it was really a satisfying conclusion. So this is my original set of resealed 12-backs. And this is what greets me every morning in my office. This 12-inch Luke is in a Canadian box, and it's one of those things I just saw in a store one day and had to have. I have very strong, fond memories of the 12-inch line. I think I liked them better than the 3 3/4-inch line because they were closer to Mego's. And I had about 4 or 5 of the characters. So this Luke was one of them, and finding him in a Canadian box was special to me, and it's just, I don't need the rest. I don't need to buy any more. I'm happy with this one as a representative of the set. Also, I've kind of picked up a bunch of play sets, and I think it's funny. The ones I bought, like the Creature Cantina here, or the Imperial Troop Transport here, I never had as a kid. I wanted them. My friend had them, and I was fascinated with them. And it's funny that I'm kind of drawn to that. So I bought these as an adult, almost like wish fulfillment. The Droid Factory breaks my Star Wars only rule, but there was an exception to it. This is something my wife found in a comic book store in her parents' hometown. It's a fairly rural town, and she was so impressed with the comic store she wanted to purchase something. This was something I had as a kid, so I was really interested in buying it. And then, of course, it's in the Canadian packaging, so that pulled some heartstrings. So I made an exception, and I'm happy I have it because I really did like this toy as a kid. And it's kind of hard to find in a Canadian package like this. So it's the one Empire piece that gets through. Okay, there's two Empire pieces that get through. This is a Poppy Japan Luke Skywalker. I collect another line by Poppy that's called the World Heroes, and I'll get into that here on Toy Ventures when I have more time. But it's sort of in the same Star Wars style with these little boxes. And I always kind of wanted one Star Wars character to round out the collection. And luckily I found one at a local show, and the guy was more than willing to do a good deal on it. So it was a good day, and it's not something I intend to chase the whole set, but I kind of like this Luke hanging on the wall here. It's a fun piece. So there is my entire Star Wars collection. That is it. I have no interest, and this sounds like I'm going to fail here, but no interest in adding to it anytime soon. I'll probably walk into something really cool right after I shoot this. Do you have principles when it comes to collecting? Are you kind of intimidated by Star Wars collecting in general? Are you like me and you get a little overwhelmed by the whole thing? Let me know in the comments. You can hit me up on Twitter at Plaid Stallions. Of course, we have a Facebook page, Plaid Stallions. And we have our own group called Pod Stallions where we discuss the podcast, but it's really anything that comes to your mind, and we'd love to have you join up and talk. Thanks again for watching. If you're new to this, please hit like and subscribe. You'll get a new toy venture every week. Thanks. Take care.